Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney, alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, the Rangers gave us a couple of things to talk about today. I don't know if you've heard, but this past Friday, the Rangers did two really big pieces of business. One, Igor Shesterkin gets a massive extension, and also Jacob Trouba, the captain of the New York Rangers, has been shipped off to Anaheim. He eventually said, "Yes, I will waive my NTC," which I would imagine Anaheim was one of them because Anaheim is not good, but he said yes anyway. And the Rangers actually not only got out of his whole contract, they got a player and a pick in return.
No soap operas, just hockey. The Rangers have been in a very weird state for the last, I'll say, 4 years, where I'm not the person who coined this term. Bill Simmons coined this term. He called it the Tyson zone, where you could say anything about Mike Tyson and it was semi-believable. And that's kind of where the Rangers are at right now, where you could tell me anything is happening behind the scenes or happening in the organization, and I'd kind of believe it. Like, the week of the a week before the trade deadline last year, when Bleacher Report just out of nowhere dropped, yeah, the Rangers called Buffalo and tried to get Alex Tuck, and Buffalo told them to take a hike. Like, what do you mean they tried to get Alex Tuck from the Sabres? And what do you mean they're going to trade Jacob Trouba on the second day of the draft? And what do you mean he's not waiving his? What do you mean they tried to trade him before getting his no trade list and set themselves up for failure? What do you mean they're bringing him back? There's so much to unpack here. I talked about this a lot on Friday right after the trade, but I wanted to kind of distill out the bulk of that conversation into something very straightforward and very direct. From 2011 to 2018, the only defenseman the Rangers drafted that played more than 4 NHL games for them was Brady Shea. That's it. In a 7-year window, the team drafted one defenseman who would be considered an NHL regular. Of course, they did draft other defensemen who did go on to play NHL games. Ryan Graves comes to mind. Of course, he never played a game with the Rangers, but he's one. Tarmo Roinanen is the other defenseman who had 4 career NHL games. Joey Keane, drafted in that window, has 2 career NHL games. But for 7 straight years, the Rangers did not draft an NHL caliber defenseman. Excuse me, they drafted one NHL caliber defenseman in that window. And that's how you get here. This is not, just because of 2, 3. This is a 10 years long problem. The Rangers have not drafted well, basically at all in the modern NHL. And that's why they are in these positions where they constantly are overcompensating. I want to talk about the 18-19 offseason, but they are constantly overcompensating to try and find what they think they're missing. And it's why, and I've used this comparison before, it always feels like the Rangers are running from fire to fire, putting them out, as opposed to preventing the fires in the first place. Like, oh, there's some rags on the floor, there's kerosene everywhere. Maybe we should clean this up, as opposed to, oh, shit, the building's burning down. Maybe we should try and put this out. Because that's kind of what it feels like.
Here's the thing, right? The circuit extension is massive, and this, I never took any stock in the, oh, you should just start Jonathan Quick, but he's, first of all, he's like 60 years old. Can we relax on that? One, and two, that was one of, if not the biggest question heading into next offseason, because if Shesterkin walked, who you getting? Whomst? Are you getting me? Are you getting Nick to do the goaltending for you? Who is going to step in and be the starting goalie for the Rangers? So that piece of business was so important that they got sorted out. That's great. Trouba getting traded should have happened in the summer. And I understand that they did so much PR. They did a lot of walk backing. They did a lot of, oh, he's still our guy. He's still our captain. He's still this great individual. And again, I have to say this a lot when talking negatively about a player, but, I'm not going after Trouba. I'm sure Trouba, the individual, is a really nice person. Like, by all accounts, he's nice with the fans. He's nice with the media. He's a good guy off the ice. On the ice, he was a net negative for the New York Rangers. And leadership-wise, I tweeted this, when it was going down on Friday, that he did a lot of theater for them, like the helmet toss and the fighting and all these things and the chicken winging. But tangibly, when he's supposed to be defending, which is the primary objective of a defenseman. I have to reiterate that he could not do it well. And that is how you ultimately evaluate how a player plays for your team, whether you're a fan, a general manager, what have you. Hey, the person's number one job is to stop pucks. Are they good at it? Yes or no? Can they defend their own blue line well? Yes or no? Can they score a lot? Is that their primary objective? Yes or no? Jacob Trouba ultimately could not defend. And so, to offset that, he chicken wing players and he was very theatrical on the ice. That was his style of play as a New York Ranger. And ultimately, it just didn't work out for him here. And again, the fact that I can't, it's so unfathomable to me that Steve Yzerman called Mike Greer and said, we have Jake Wallman, who by all accounts was not even bad in Detroit. He was good. He called Mike Greer and said, not only can you have him for free, we will give you a second round pick just so you can take him and that full contract. But somehow, Chris Drury had an $8 million third pairing defenseman that he had to move because it was that bad. And then Anaheim said, not only will we take that full contract, we'll give you Urho Vakanainen and a fourth round draft pick for him. I love the NHL, Nick. It is such a beautiful place to be.
I frankly do not understand at points. And like I understand that Pat Verbeek is in a very, I don't want to say he's not quite on the hot seat yet, but they're going on like 7 years without a playoff appearance, going on like 8 without a playoff series win. Eventually they need to like start showing some tangible signs of progress. Like it's one thing to draft all of the guys they've drafted over the last handful of years. I like some of the Pat Verbeek draft picks, but eventually you do have to start winning hockey games. And the Ducks are in a very weird situation where they are continuing to bolt players from other organizations onto their team to buy some instant credibility to kind of stave off the dogs, for lack of a better expression. You know, adding Gudis and Strome and Killorn and Vetrano and now Trouba to augment, you know, Mason McTavish and Troy Terry and Zegras and Leo Carlson. They have drafted guys that are interesting and tantalizing, but until you are able to show meaningful results from those guys and you continue to buy short-term fixes, you still aren't addressing your fundamental issue. You know, you're not signing Ryan Strome because you're in a great position as a franchise. You know, you're signing Ryan Strome because you need a stopgap 2C to play with some of these young guys so they don't get their teeth kicked in. And that's what I want to circle back to as far as talking about Trouba and his tenure. The Rangers in 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019, they took it on the chin. They got their teeth kicked in over and over and over again. They trade JT Miller, Ryan McDonough, Rick Nash, Matt Zuccarello, Kevin Hayes, all in a 13-month window. And you don't want to be drafting the guys you draft and put them on a team with minimal or little talent. You know, 2017, 2018, they go into the year with McDonough, Stahl, Shea, Nick Holden, Kevin Shattenkirk, and Brendan Smith. The year after that, it's Brady Shea, Neil Pionk, Mark Stahl, Kevin Shattenkirk, D'Angelo, Brendan Smith. They recognize 16-17 is the first time they take an honest look and they're like, we're kind of old and we're not that good in 2016, 2017. That's why they do the step on for D'Angelo and the pick trade. And then the year after that, they go to Shea, Trouba, Stahl, Lindgren, D'Angelo, Fox. In one offseason, they overhaul half their defense. And of that overhaul, they had to trade for all three of them. They traded for Trouba, they traded for Lindgren, and they traded for Adam Fox. But what did they do in that year too? Well, we can't be paying Brady Shea $5.5 million for the next 4 years. We have to trade him. Okay. You get lucky that Adam Fox is a lot better than you thought he would be, because ultimately, and I still stand by this, I think if the Rangers knew he was going to be this good, they probably don't trade for Trouba in the first place, because they did not understand what they were trading for when they acquired Jacob Trouba. They saw a power play one quarterback on a really good team. That 2017, 2018 Winnipeg team is one of the best teams of the last 10, 15 years in the regular season. Ultimately, they lost to Vegas in the conference final after a brutal second round against Nashville. But the Rangers have had this issue for most of my adult life where they get decent enough guys in house. And it's a matter of finding how can we get, this group over the edge? You could go back to 2011, 2012. They lose to the Devils in that conference final. So what's their solution? Well, we need more top end talent. We don't have we don't have a Kovalchuk. We don't have a Zach Parise. We go trade for Rick Nash. But in doing that, we lose our depth. So what do we have to do? We trade Marian Gaborik to get depth back. And you end up you go down the trade tree and you go through the history, and it's really easy to understand how you get here, because you don't end up in a position where you sign a guy to the extension the Rangers did Trouba and then trade him 4 years, 5 years into the extension if everything's going well. This is 10 years of bad decisions that get you here where, well, we have Girardi and Stahl. Well, we got to get rid of Girardi. We still have Mark Stahl, but okay, we're going to get Shattenkirk. He'll replace Dan Girardi. Well, Shattenkirk's not working. Okay, we're going to get Jacob Trouba in here. He's going to replace Kevin Shattenkirk, and that's going to work. Really quickly, you see that they don't want to take their medicine. They don't want to develop guys, and it's how you get here.
At least, the silver lining to all this is that, they have realized their issues late, short. We've talked about this at length for the last 3 years. Is the blue line has been one of the bigger issues, and yet it takes longer than we'd like to, longer than we'd like it to be to get it fixed. But at least Chris Drury sees what we see to a certain extent.
Oh, I think this is more that Trouba was kind of throwing a tantrum more so than being bad, because this isn't any discernibly different in terms of his quality of play.
I think it's both. I think it's reasonable to assume it's both, because he was clearly not happy off the ice, sure, but also he wasn't great before. But this particular season, he was playing like he didn't care to be there. And, he did the fighting and, the game before he got traded against New Jersey, whatever. But ultimately, he really looked like he was mentally somewhere else. And that propelled Chris Drury to be like, okay, like this, the story got out, and now I have to do something now. And somehow, some way, he sold his soul to the devil. I don't know. He found an NHL team to take on Trouba's full contract and didn't have to pay to give it up. So, I mean, in that trade in and of itself is a Chris Drury masterclass. We won't go down the rabbit hole of how we got here per se when it comes to the trade itself, because I will give Chris Drury a lot of credit for somehow finding a schmuck to take on that contract for free. But at the end of the day, you are right in that I just wish the Rangers understood more about how to properly see a defenseman and look at them and go, can they defend? Because when the Ducks traded for Trouba,
it's in the name of the position, Andrew. Defensemen play defense.
Because again, and a lot of teams don't realize this, and I say that because when the Ducks traded for Jacob Trouba, Joe Cronin, not Joe, the general manager of the Ducks,
Pat Verbeek,
yeah. I think it was also Joe Cronin. I can't remember. One of those guys came out and said, Jacob Trouba we value his leadership. Which tells me they don't know anything about the Rangers. They don't. They really don't. Because what does that mean? Pat Verbeek and Joe Cronin. What does that mean? And again, I tweet this out every now and again as well, and I want to reiterate it here. When this applies to any player in any sport. If you have a certain job, like let's say you're a defenseman, or if you're a goalie, or whatever, your number one job as a defenseman is to defend. If someone starts talking about a player and they don't talk about their number one priority in the leadoff, then they are objectively bad at that leadoff. If you're talking about Jacob Trouba, who makes $8 million a year to be a defenseman, and your first words are not about his ability to defend, that means he's a bad defenseman by definition. Because if he was so good at defending, one, the Rangers wouldn't have traded him, I would have to imagine. And two, you would be glowing. Oh my God, we just got one of the best defensemen in the league. He shuts everybody down. No one passes by him. He's such a fast skater. No, they let off with his leadership. That means he's bad at defending, and that's ultimately why the Rangers got rid of him.
And like, not to be that guy, but like, you look at the last 4 years of this team, and you look at the thing that told me all I needed to know about that group was after the Devils series and Gallant got fired, was all of a sudden the same guys who had spent the previous 2 years talking about how much fun it was to play for Gallant was complaining that we didn't have enough structure, we didn't practice hard enough, we didn't have leadership. There is no leadership here. The Rangers issue, and I think you can tie this back to the Sather years and the Gorton years, is that they have consistently tried to chase these narratives, these ideas, as opposed to actually fulfilling them. The idea of, well, we need someone to put us over the top, so let's get Marty St. Louis. We need someone to help push us over the top. Let's go get Keith Yandel. And then, well, we traded our last captain, and we're not really sure if we should name Ryan McDonough captain or not, but he's our best player, and we feel that we need a captain. As the New York Rangers, we can't go into another season without another captain. And then you name him captain and you trade him 2 years later. And it's the same thing here. I know there's a lot of, oh, well, they should name Trocheck the captain. They should name five. Don't name anyone captain. No one on this team has proven themselves worthy of being a captain. There is a baseline understanding. And
Give it to Will Cooley.
I spent 40 minutes yesterday.
Only half kidding.
I spent 40 minutes yesterday putting this together and doing some research. Of the 32 teams in the NHL, only 7 are captained by players who are not drafted by that team. 2 of those are the expansion teams, Vegas and Seattle, so we can disqualify them. So 5 of the 30 teams have a captain they did not draft. The Anaheim Ducks, who are in a rebuild. The Chicago Blackhawks, who are in a rebuild. Minnesota, Jared Spurgeon was an Islanders draft pick in like the 7th round. That was, that's an outlier. And really, and what's it called? And at a certain point, you have to look at this. Oh, and Jordan Stahl. That was the one I couldn't think of because he was a Penguins draft pick originally, and he's the Carolina captain now. But for the most part, you name a veteran from another organization your captain if you are in that rebuilding period, because you don't want to put too much pressure on a young guy. Bedard will eventually be named the captain in Chicago. I imagine that one of these young Anaheim guys, whether it's McTavish or whomsoever, eventually gets named captain, whatever. The Rangers.
Zegras will be a great captain for a different team.
Hey man, for a hot second there, I thought Chris Drury turned chicken shit into chicken salad, and I quickly remembered Trevor Zegras is hurt. And look, I don't think Trevor Zegras is solving the Rangers' issues. The Rangers still have issues. We are going to talk about the games they played over the last few days, but after we do that, we talk about this. We talk about Shesterkin, but like, there is a way to go about doing certain things. Naming a captain is one of them. We have strong historical and just looking around data to tell you there's a very specific archetype. You are either a top 10 draft pick who has a really strong amateur pedigree, or you are an extreme outlier. You're Adam Lowry, you're Anders Lee, you're Mark Stone, you're a day 2, day 3 pick in the draft who really outplays their coverage, for lack of a better word. The Rangers continuing to do this with guys who, A, aren't good enough as players, and then B, don't have the mentality. This is an issue. The Rangers have talented, gifted hockey players, but being talented and being gifted is not the same as being a leader. And it's very clear, based on the way this group operates, they need a vocal leader. They need somebody who can corral this group and keep it on the tracks when things get difficult. Because it wasn't Jacob Trouba. If it was, wouldn't have happened 3 years ago, Georgiev wouldn't have had to punch Tony DeAngelo in the face if there was a good leader on this team. Because somebody would have pulled Tony DeAngelo aside at some point in the previous 3 years and said, hey man, knock it off. I know you're frustrated, but you keep busting his balls, eventually he's going to snap on you. You know, the Tom Wilson game, if this group really was about that action and had a good leader, and look, I know Trouba and Kreider were hurt, they weren't playing in that game, but that's something that's in you. You know, if you have strong leadership, things get handled. You know, as much as shit is going badly in Boston right now this season, I don't have any question that Brad Marchand knows how to get something out of his group. I never felt like Jacob Trouba was either going to make a play to help the team win a game or do anything discernibly helpful. You know, that's the biggest thing. The Rangers want a captain, and that's why he did the performative nonsense. You know, I saw more than one person being like, I'm thankful somebody showed they care, blah, 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 blah. You go and watch the highlights of all of these hits. They are in games the Rangers are losing by like 3 or 4 goals. You know, it's one
Yeah.
thing if you want to say it's 1-0 and he's trying to get the team going.
Yeah.
Launching yourself through Timo Meyer's skull in a 2-0 game with 7 minutes to go in a game 7 is the biggest sore loser shit I've ever seen. You can call that leadership or being gritty, whatever. Make a hockey play.
Right.
At a certain
Hey, your
point,
team is down 2 goals. Maybe you should go help your team score 1.
seriously, like, what are we doing here? Anybody who ate the cheese on the performative nonsense. The game he threw his helmet, he was on the ice for 3 goals against and
He
took 2
lost the
penalties.
game for them.
Yeah,
They lost that game because of Trouba.
because he was that bad.
It was they I forget what the score was, but like
I think it was 6-2 was
he
the
was
final
on
score.
the ice for like all of the goals against. Like, I don't care about the helmet throw. Go stop the other team from scoring. You're a defenseman. Please. Go do your job. Don't throw helmets. That's not your job.
Word to Bill Belichick. Do your job. Don't do someone else's job. Do your job.
Yeah.
Or word to Alec Baldwin in The Departed. I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy. That's who Jacob Trouba is. He has always been miscast. You know what you said before about how the Ducks traded for him, and the first thing they said was his leadership. The Rangers, the first thing they said was his defense, which tells me they didn't watch him play in Winnipeg, because he was always playing with a defensive partner. He was playing with Bufflin. He was playing with Tobias Edstrom. He was playing with Josh Morrissey. All of those guys profile as shot-suppressing, defense-first guys. Then who did the Rangers play him with? Well, first year was Brady Shea, and then they traded Brady Shea. And then it was K'Andre Miller. And then it stayed K'Andre Miller. We have 5 years of evidence that Trouba is not a defensive, shot-suppressing defenseman. He has okay impacts offensively, but he gives more of it back. So because of that, you aren't getting the full impact, the full benefit of what he's good at. And the Rangers consistently used him in defense first situations when he's not good at defense, which tells me they don't understand what he's good at, which tells me they have a fundamental problem with talent evaluation. Just fundamentally, the defense position has been this organization's problem forever. You know, you mentioned it before, the idea of, do they actually know? And I really do think on some degree there's some cognitive dissonance here of, well, we're great in goals against every year because we have one of the best goalies in the league, and that means we're a good defensive team. You know, they made the mistake with Stahl and Girardi last decade because Lundqvist was so great. They got out of this one. We assume they're going to get out of Lindgren or let him walk outright after this season. But like, at a certain point, the defense is the issue here.
Yeah.
Like, fundamentally, watch the games. Anybody who's
same problem.
It's the same issue. It's just that this year, the problems are amplified because of other deficiencies. You know, because Zibanejad is giving you less than ever, because the power play isn't top 5 right now, it feels a lot more pronounced. It feels a lot more glaring. These are the same issues.
These are the things that we've been talking about for years, and it's been dating back to the Lundqvist era where the defense is bad. The Rangers gave up a lot in transition and a lot of, plays in front of their own net. But because their goaltending was so spectacular, it masked a lot of the problems. But ultimately, when it comes down to the biggest games of the season, come the playoffs, where teams have extensively scouted you and understand your problems and how to beat you at your own game, the Rangers have fallen short every single time. And it's crazy to me that, we have the same footage that the team does. We watch. we dive into the stats, we understand what's going on, and I understand, it's tough to facilitate a lot of trades or changes. These aren't just numbers in NHL 25. These are actual human beings, and there's a human aspect to this as well. But this isn't a problem that just appeared yesterday. This is something that has been here in the DNA of this team for Lundqvist's first season was 2005. Since 2005, and since before as well, but 2005 is, you could say, the first real start of a building block to what the Rangers accomplished in 2014, etc. The blue line has never been the shining light
No.
of this team. Now,
The
that's
casuals and the people who don't watch, yes, because
sure.
I can vividly remember I can close my eyes right now and I can picture Mike Milbury and Keith Jones standing at an NBCSN desk with
Yeah.
Captain Tappan or Liam McHugh talking about what a great defensive team the Rangers are because they have a first pair like Dan Girardi and Ryan McDonough.
Right.
And then they get Mark Stahl out there on their second pair, and Mark Stahl is so great at defense. This is to the casual eye. It looks okay because the goals against numbers look okay. And well, nobody in actual hockey media, legacy hockey media, addresses scoring chances or expected goals or whatever. But like the eyes, not give up a lot of goals, good team, good defense. That's the way those types of people think. And it's why the Rangers are in this position. They do not understand what makes good defense. Like, even if you want to talk about this in the nebulous, like right now, I see what they think they see in Victor Mancini. He's tall and he skates reasonably well. The
He's
problem
confident with
is
the puck too. I like that.
the game is very fast for him right now
Yeah.
because he is, getting his first real taste. There is a massive difference between playing in the A and playing up here. He's 2 years removed from being in college and not a major power conference. There is potential there. The problem is the Rangers are inclined and they have given certain archetypes more opportunities than others. One of the first big issues we addressed on this show 3 years ago was the Nils Lundqvist versus Braden Schneider discourse of, well, one of these guys is going to end up sticking. They have 2 right-handed defensemen ahead of them in the pecking order, and they gave Schneider significantly more opportunity to figure it out. Now, do I know what they're going to do with Mancini? No, of course not. We have a whole season to go. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if they traded for a defenseman to put in that spot come playoff time. But if you are going to tell me that we're playing Mancini, fine. But you actually have to give him a chance. And then 2, to build off of that, if this goes the Libor Hayek way of, well, we like him, eventually you got to call a spade a spade. I know he's, 20 some odd games into his NHL career, but like, we got to be realistic here.
I mean, yeah, the thing about Mancini is he definitely, like, defensively, he still has a way to go. It's something that I do expect will come with time. You can kind of see bits and pieces of him maybe starting to kind of get into the groove of things. There's he's still not quite there, and I would assume that Mancini
instincts comes with time.
It's one of those things where it's one of those things where I do think that the Rangers ultimately make Mancini go down to the A. They get either Vakanainen in, and maybe he sticks, and they get Mancini down to the A, get him some more experience, and then maybe next year he becomes more of a regular. Maybe Mancini becomes a rotating 7th defenseman. Who knows what happens? But Mancini isn't strong enough defensively yet to showcase to me anyway that he is somebody that can stay in the NHL and defend, the likes of Crosby and McDavid on those guys if need be. If he's, if he's out on a long shift and McDavid comes on the ice, how much hope do you have that somebody like Victor Mancini can reasonably stop a guy like Connor McDavid? Right now, the answer is not a whole lot because he's so new to the NHL, and that time will come. Hopefully, it'll come if you're the Rangers. But I do think the Rangers are in the market for a top 4 defenseman because that's what Trouba was supposed to be for them. And now they essentially have a hole there. At least, in our minds, yes, because they had a hole there to begin with because Trouba was not a top four defenseman, but also now they don't like the Rangers. He was a top four defenseman. Now they don't have one. So I would imagine that they are on the market trying to find someone to actively replace Trouba's minutes. I don't, they might try the in-house experiments, maybe in couple of months just to see. All right, like what does Mancini have? Can Zach Jones play top 4 minutes? I don't think they trust Zach Jones to do that, but they might try it out, see how it goes. And then if he might do well for 4 games, then he might have a bad shift, and then they yeet him to Siberia. But who knows with the Rangers? But this is a team that at least you know they have started to understand now. It's almost 2025, and this has been an issue for 20 years. But they have finally understood. Oh, our blue line isn't very good. We should do something about that. But it's better very late than never. At this point, I'll take what I could get.
All of this was avoidable to some degree. And
Yes.
I think that's the biggest frustration for a lot of people. Like whether you were out on Trouba as early as we were, whether you were out on Gaudreau or whomsoever they've exiled over the last handful of seasons, the problem is they gave guys too many chances to figure it out. Like after the way the last 2 years went and the way stuff went in the summer, any logical person would have told you, you can't bring this guy back. Not even in terms of play, in terms of the morale, in terms of the vibes, you bring that guy back in after clearly telegraphing to everyone else that you don't want him to be here anymore. And it's going to disrupt the way things go. And as much as everybody can be professional and turn it on and off when the cameras are there and they have to talk to the media, on a fundamental level, I can't exactly blame Trouba for moping and pouting because I too. But the thing that frustrates me about this and why I have a little less empathy than maybe some other people is they wanted to get you out of here. They offered to get you out of here.
Yeah, you said no.
And you said no. And I'm sure there was more than one conversation at various points between June and last Friday of like, is there anything we can do to make this work better for you here?
Sure.
Because I'm sure at some point there was a sit down of, look, we wanted to try and do this. It was disrespectful that the way we did it, and we shouldn't have done that. I would still like to try and make this work. If that's not doable for you, I understand that. Let's try and find something that does work for you. I know I read reports that his agent was involved with trying to kind of, for lack of a better word, find a recruitment, find somewhere for him to land that he was happy to. And look, it's over with. It's done with. Getting rid of Trouba does not fix all of their problems.
No.
It does not solve the team's problems. They still need to play better defense. They still need to score more consistently.
Trouba wasn't on the ice in last night's game against the Kraken, and they
played no
blew
defense.
it so egregiously hard that, again, trading Trouba is a step in the right direction. It ultimately makes the team better. It removes a distraction, because of the whole summer situation. But until the Rangers figure out, hey, by the way, we should defend players that are trying to score. It's really not going to fundamentally change this team.
Oh no, I'm giggling because I'm reading Ottawa Senators owner Michael Landuler on recent report that the Rangers were targeting Brady Tkachuk for soft tampering, and the Rangers said this is an irresponsible accusation and we defer to the commissioner's office. Come on now. Are we calling a Larry Brooks column tampering? Like, is it real? Like, obviously, every team in the NHL would like to have Brady Tkachuk on their team. He's a good hockey player. He's very good at hockey.
If I write an article and say I would love the Rangers to trade for Connor McDavid, is that tampering?
Like, that's kind of what we're saying here. Like, sure, and look, we all know there's tampering. We all know these people back channel to each other. Pretending that this is some affront to or disrespectful is ridiculous. Every single team, if presented with the option of making the team better or maybe being a little ethically gray, is going to make the team better. For all of the hand wringing, well, he negotiated a limited no trade clause. He should have had a no move. I hate to be that guy, but you could have taken $500,000, $1 million less money And you could have got the full no move clause, so you wouldn't have been put on waivers. As as much as, yes, in the spirit of a no trade clause, the Rangers kind of got around it, but they did nothing that the NHL does not currently allow. If he went on waivers, I don't know if anyone would have claimed him. I mean, I imagine the Ducks would have if they were willing to pay a draft pick and a
Sure.
player to acquire him. But like, Tampa Bay won 2 Stanley Cups and then did this to Ryan McDonough. Ryan McDonough was actually good for Tampa Bay during those windows when they won those championships. Marc-Andre Fleury won the Vezina, and the Blackhawks and the Golden Knights did this to him. At a certain point,
The agent made a graphic
yeah,
with the backstab.
yeah.
Like, guys, it's not just the Rangers. Also, the funny thing about this whole ordeal, and I tweeted this out when it happened too, was Kevin Weeks was talking to Trouba
Oh, I saw that.
on ESPN Plus, and the question was something along the lines of, oh, what there were reports about the Red Wings wanting you, and what would you have felt playing for your hometown team? And Trouba really skirted the question. He didn't really answer it, and then he said, is that report true? Is because don't believe everything you hear, like something along the lines of that. And Kevin Weeks' response was, "Oh, it's true. I checked." And then Trouba doesn't say anything, and it's an awkward.
Trouba comes off very unself-aware at times. He
Yeah,
often seems like
yeah.
he thinks he's a lot better at hockey than he is, and like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. Well, Jacob, we know.
We
We
know.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
like,
might not, but we do.
we know.
We do.
I,
And that you know what that goes back to, when because you mentioned this from time to time when the Rangers treat us like we don't know what's going on. That was a prime time injection of that
yeah.
from Jacob Trouba. Like, do you think we don't know what's going on? Jacob, listen, brother.
We're not your kids,
We,
We're not
we
stupid.
yeah, just because we're not in the meeting with Drury doesn't mean we don't have some inkling as to the context clues of what's going on, right? You don't have to lie to us and say the Red Wings were never involved in trying to get you when Emily Kaplan said it was happening. Friedman said it was happening. Like, even on Friday, the conversation was, oh, the Red Wings the Red Wings are in the mix and all. You're gonna turn around on ESPN and tell us that the Red Wings were not involved at all, dog. And on top of that, Kevin Weeks called your bluff, and all you did was smile and sit there, dog. I'm so over it, so over it.
Okay. Shesterkin had to get done.
Yes,
It was a very good move to do it the same day. I assume this has been agreed to for a while, and
yeah,
it was just a matter of when they were going to announce it,
sure,
and they were keeping this in their back pocket. But I understand the contingent that is against this extension, but the reason I don't share that position is because then you would fundamentally need to reorganize the entire
of
organization,
course,
and I don't think there's a world where, for lack of a better word, Chris Drury would fire himself, because that's effectively what you would do.
yeah,
If you let Shesterkin walk or you traded him before the end of the season and you handicap this team's ability to be competitive this season, you're effectively telling the owner who hired you in the first place because the rebuild was taking too long that you didn't do a good enough job in the rebuild. That's what you would be doing if you said, well, I would rather spend that 11.5 million on 2 or 3 guys. I would rather find a way to deepen our roster. Well, why didn't you do that at any point in the last 3 years when you had cap flexibility?
right.
The first year he took over, the Rangers had like $20 million in cap space that first summer, and they spent it on Zibanejad extension. They spent it on Brandon Gaudreau. They spent it on Reeves, Patrick Nemeth. They spent their money. They burned all their
Poorly,
flexibility over the last 3 years. And now, you do kind of need a reset. You do need to find ways to get cheaper, because the one thing I saw other people talking about yesterday was, well, the Rangers aren't that old of a team. They've got one of the lowest average ages in the entire NHL. The problem with that is that all of their top 6 forwards are over 30 other than Lafreniere. Other than Lafreniere, every other one of their top 6 forwards is over 30. Now, if you want to say Perot is a bankable top 6 guy, okay, fine. I'll give you that. So you got 2 guys for your top 6 under the age of 30 going into next season that you feel reasonably confident in. These windows close a lot faster than we think they do. And I don't think the Rangers are going to be like awful, but I do think there's a real possibility that a year or two from now, we are sitting here being like, damn, they needed to reset and they tripled and quadrupled down on an aging group. You know, Zibanejad's 31, Riley Smith's 33, Trocheck's 32, Panarin's 33, Kreider's 33. You know, you're going to have to eventually reset your roster. And like, as much as I like these guys, as much as I like Hedel, I like Cooley, I don't think either of those guys is a bankable top 6 forward yet. Could they be? Maybe.
If Hito stays healthy, he will be.
I think that this is an aside,
but that's such a big if
yes,
that it's really. I'm just thrilled that he's still here.
yes,
Like more than I'm not even thinking about that with Hedel. With his and we saw it in against Seattle. I mean that goal that he's like it was incredible. Like I have so much faith in Hedel. I love the way he plays the game, but I am just really nervous whenever he is on the ice because of his injury history. So the fact that he's even here, that's enough for me. He's here and he's playing well despite everything. That's all I need. I'm good.
So, and aside from that, I think your long-term answer is you play Zibanejad on the wing with Hedel as his center. I do think that's eventually what's going to happen in a year or two down the road when the Rangers finally acknowledge Zibanejad's defense isn't good enough to still be a matchup center. But as far as like the vision here, the plan is still the same. They're going to win on great goaltending because I think I can understand the idea here. You know, having a great goalie is kind of a shortcut. You know, you don't need to have as good of a team if you have the great goalie. You know, there are 2 ways to go about it. Most teams opt to do the mid-level to slightly above average goalie who's not as expensive because they would rather spend that money in other places in their roster because they feel those positions are more impactful. You know, you would always be better off with the $13 million forward than you would be the $13 million goalie. Always. You are always going to be better off having the best forward in the world than the best goalie in the world because the forward materially impacts more of the game and has a more actionable path to changing the outcome of a game. But that said, the Rangers are too far down the road with this roster construction to seriously consider that because if you were to take that step back and say, all right, we could do better than spending that $11.5 million on just the goalie. Okay, what are you spending it on? What do you really want to give Chris Drury $11 million to spend on forwards and defensemen? That's the first question. Number 2, okay, well, if we get worse at goalie, how can we improve this roster? Well, we need at least 2 defensemen. We probably need at least a forward or 2. Okay, who are you going to get to materially change the trajectory of the roster? And look, I know people are jokingly McDavid or Eichel, and that's 2 years from now. Then Panarin's off the books. Kreider will have 1 year left on his deal. I get it. It's a nice thought. You don't go banking on guys getting to unrestricted free agency because that doesn't happen in the NHL. These
Yeah.
superstar players, you know, Panarin is the best unrestricted free agent to ever get there. You know, that is a once in a so far 20-year thing where a truly elite player reaches unrestricted free agency. Like even Stamkos the first time, you know, 10 minutes before before free agency open. Nah, he's going to stay in Tampa. There is no path to the Rangers being a true Stanley Cup contender with the group they have right now if you take Shesterkin away. Because then you're going to say, all right, well, we need a hurricane-style roster construction. And unfortunately for the Rangers, they don't have the identity. They don't have that style of play where you can just drop in slightly above average players and get everyone to buy in. You know, the Hurricane system strategy, it works because all of those guys play that way. For the Leafs, it's a little bit different. That's kind of where the Rangers would be if Shesterkin moved on. That's what the Rangers would do. They would have the 4 or 5 really expensive players, and they would probably have 2 medium-priced goalies, and they would have a very inefficient roster because it would be top heavy because you have a lot of money invested in a handful of players. This path is hard. Winning with goaltending is the hardest thing to do. It is easier than trying to replace everything. You know, you think the other thing that happened on Friday was the Terry Pagula press conference, which is
Yes.
that The Sabres have been telling you they're a year away for 7 years now. The
Yeah.
Senators have been telling you they're a year away for 7 years now. The Ducks have been telling you they're a year away. The Sharks, 5 years now. The Blackhawks, 4. It is really easy to say we're going to tear this down and start over because you don't have a fine timeline yet. It's always easy to say, let's blow it up, let's start over. It is always going to be more difficult to navigate with a tightrope than it would be to start over. But Chris Drury doesn't have that luxury. He can't say we're starting over because he spent the last 3 years under the premise of we're close.
That and yeah, I don't know if I trust Drury with all that money because of the like what you mentioned, the Nemeth, the Goudreaus, the Reeves. I don't think he would do that again per se, but I also don't know what he would do. And that's kind of the scary part is, with some GMs, you can kind of understand like, okay, these are the types of players that they would target if they had unlimited money. With Drury, I don't know what he would go after because the first year, okay, well he's overpaid a bunch of guys and none of them worked out, and he had to pay for some of them to go away, and then he went out and he gutted the whole roster essentially to get Patrick Kane, and who we all knew was going to be a bad idea, and surprise, surprise, it was. And then they went into last year with the best team ever, and Drury said, "Oh, we'll just get Wenberg." Yeah, good, good. And then that was it. And that didn't work out either. So I don't know what the alternative would have been. Like,
And that doesn't mean this is good. This doesn't necessarily mean like this is a good thing. It means this is better than the alternative.
yeah,
And that's the
yeah.
point. That's the point.
Ultimately, Shesterkin is the best goaltender on the planet, and the Rangers are not only a much better team with him on the ice, they are a team with him on the ice. Without him on the ice, they're not anywhere resembling forget a cup contender. Like, this is a team that for the past 20 years has been built. Their DNA is our best player is the goaltender, and we are going to do everything in our power to essentially make sure that we win every game like 2-1. That's what they've tried to do, and had some success, but ultimately still no banner to show. Ultimate banner to show for it, unfortunately. But there was no plan B. There was no okay. Well, if you don't sign Shesterkin, then blank. There was no plan B because if you let him go, then the entire DNA falls apart, and all of the issues that weren't as glaring before have become much more glaring now.
They're glaring with him on the
They're glaring,
team.
yeah, exactly. They're glaring with him on the ice. So what is the team going to look like if you let him go? And again, it's a matter of you have that money. If you choose to not sign him, okay, well, you still got to spend some of that money to get a starting goaltender. You're not gonna give it to Jonathan Quick, okay? If you want to let Quick walk, let's just say for example, and you now trust Dylan Garand, who's by all accounts been playing really well in the AHL, and also Jonathan Quick is 39 years old. If Jonathan Quick, let's say, retires, and it's Dylan Garand as the backup, okay, well, now you need a real starting goalie that'll play like 60 games because Dylan Garand's a rookie. Like, he didn't even play against Seattle because they didn't trust him. They wanted Quick
I
to do
thought
it.
he was going to play tonight, but Igor apparently is going to play.
No,
So
Igor said, "Listen, honey, I know you got a newborn. I gotta carry this godforsaken team because if without like, did you see the Seattle game? No. I'm sorry, but I gotta be there."
I vividly remember the first year Lundqvist was retired. He was at a UFC event, and I think that was the first time I like genuinely saw him smile in a long time. Because like this drains the life out of you.
It
This is
does.
not an easy job.
It
When like
does.
every single time Shesterkin goes on the ice, especially in the playoffs, he's telling himself, "I give up 2 goals, we're probably losing this game." You go into that series last year against Florida in the conference finals, and he knows he needs to be the best player on the ice, or they're not going to win. That is a really difficult line to walk and a really difficult headspace to occupy for an extended period of time. Goaltending in this league is very fickle. It is very hard to find good goaltending. The Rangers are extremely, like, unconscionably lucky as far as the path they've walked over the last 15 to 20 years. Because you look at a lot of these places, sure, there's always going to be the Cam Talbots of the world in free agency every year who bounce around. You can always find a backup. You are not finding a bell cow starter in free agency. You might be able to trade for one, but why is that team that clearly needs a goalie, because every team needs a goalie, going to willingly trade a quality goalie away? That
The
happens
Rangers should just acquire Connor Hellbuck. I mean, come on. How hard could it be?
at a certain point. At a certain point, it doesn't even become a matter of how good can you make the team. It's a matter of, can you stop the bleeding long enough to, can we be passable so that every year around the deadline we can bolt on a few pieces and we roll the dice? Because, like, right now, it's so early. It's early December. We've got 4 months till the trade, 3 months till 3.5 months till trade deadline, 4.5 months to the playoffs. There's a lot that still needs to happen over the course of the next few months as far as where the Rangers are going from here. There's a lot to kind of unpack and figure out, but, like, the most obvious is guys got to play better defense. I mean, and that's not just the defenseman. That's everyone needs to be more active in participating in defense. And that's something we've been saying for 4 years now. Until you get the Zibanejads and the Kreiders of the world to play better defense, why are they the matchup line? Why are they out there against the other team's best players with Miller and Trouba if they're not good at defense?
Right.
If you are going to try and do that, the hard matchup idea, you need that defense to be there. And, Seattle's not exactly a world beater. That's one of the most average hockey teams in the entire world.
Sam and Joe, throughout the entire third period, were like, "Hey guys, by the way, the Kraken can't score, and they're scoring on every shot. Hey, the Rangers should do something about that." That's the TLDR of the entire third period broadcast. The Kraken scored. Now again, one of them was empty net. Whatever. Kraken scored 7 goals. And the entire 20 minutes, Sam and Joe were like, "Hey, this team can't score. What is happening to this defense?"
The one other thing about that, I didn't see any referendums about Jonathan Quick as a human being after he gave up 6 goals in a game. Every single, and that's going to be the most annoying part of this, is that every time Igor gives up 2 goals quick for the next 7 years, we shouldn't give him the contract, as opposed, because that's how sports work.
I know.
It feels like we've kind of reached a breaking point in the discourse where, like, there are just some people who they're so set in their opinion that it doesn't even matter what really happens. It's just a matter of repeating that opinion over and over and over and over again until it kind of reaches a semblance of permanence. And the one last thing I wanted to hit on before we get out of here, they still need to play better. Fundamentally, as much as the last week has been an exhale, like, okay, we're keeping this on the tracks. The season's not entirely off the rails. We're still not exactly out of the woods here. They do need to actually start winning some hockey games and putting together some good hockey so that they can start to gradually build up to what they're supposed to be. The first few months have been very disjointed. A lot of, we beat the bad teams, we lose to the good teams, but, like, they need to start making incremental progress, because it's really hard to make progress really fast. It's a lot easier to start over time, gradually building, improving, because right now it kind of feels like we're in a stop and start over and over again.
Until they remember how to, or maybe they never learned it, but until they remember, hey, by the way, if we want to win hockey games, we have to not give up 5 goals in a row. Think of it this way. It is December 9th, 2024. The Rangers play the Chicago Blackhawks tonight at Madison Square Garden.
The worst team in the entire NHL.
The worst team in the NHL. The New York Rangers are currently 14-11-1. They are in the last wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Right now, and the Rangers have played 26 games. Right now, they are tied with the New York Islanders, who don't have, they are one of the teams of all time, roster-wise. They also have 29 points. They cannot hold the lead to save their lives. Give them a lead and you will win the game. That's how the Islanders play. They have 3 more games played. They are 11, and 7. They, by the way, are tied with the Rangers in points. It's only been 26 games for the Rangers. There's 60 more games to go. But if you don't change something, sooner rather than later, and you don't start banking points now, if you don't win against the bad teams, then you need every point you can get in this league. The lead in the Eastern Conference with the top 3 is only getting, more. The Capitals right now are 19-6-2, winning every game under Spencer Carberry.
With no Ovechkin.
They are the best team right now in the Eastern Conference with 40 points. New Jersey's right behind them. Carolina's right behind them. The Lightning, who are not nearly as good as they have been, are still better right now than the Rangers. They have 30 points. They have a game in hand on the Rangers as well. So at a certain point, if you don't figure it out sooner rather than later, if you figure it out, with 30 games left, you're going to have to win 28 of them to make the damn playoffs. This was supposed to be the cup contending team of the season. And if they don't figure out how to stop transition offense, like now, they might even make the playoffs, guys.
No, the one thing they have working for them is the simple fact that this is a terrible year for the league at large.
Sure.
There are so many.
Now, again, I'm not
teams.
saying they won't make the playoffs,
Yes.
but what I am saying is that, you got to get the points. You have to get points.
Like, realistically, of the teams behind them, the Islanders, Flyers, Penguins, Blue Jackets, Senators, Sabres, Red Wings, Canadians, all of those teams are outright bad.
Yeah.
Like, the Rangers don't even have to play that good, and they'll stumble into a playoff spot. I know. They're what? They're the one thing I want to see, for the love of God, please, 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 keep Miller with Fox. We'll figure out the rest. Give me one functional defensive pair. I think Jones and Schneider are more than adequate, as I would play them the second most minutes, but I know that's not going to happen. But I need the Rangers to keep with what's working and try and fix what isn't, instead of changing everything. That's really been my big gripe so far this year, as far as the day-to-day roster management stuff is. We had really good stuff for 2-3 weeks to start the season, and then the injured guys came back, and that kind of tanked all of the underlying number success, and it very quickly became a referendum on the goaltending and trying to win on just goaltending.
Lindgren was hurt, and the Rangers played their best hockey.
Yeah.
And then he came back, and, I don't want to blame it all on Lindgren, obviously. Not like he's been a positive for this team defensively either. And the Rangers, I would have to imagine, are they going to move him or let him walk at the end of the year? But, why not just go back to what was clearly working before? Like, you could sit, it's okay. You could sit Lindgren for a game and just try to see how it goes. It's okay. It's December. You can try these things out and not have, pitchforks at your office. Like, it's okay. You can sit Lindgren and see how it goes.
Anything else before we get out of here?
Please beat Chicago. Oh, please beat Chicago.
Because then, I don't want to be that guy, but if it really gets bad, Drury will throw Laviolette under the bus. I don't really have any hesitation about that.
I mean, I would have to think, because that game was at MSG last night and the Knicks didn't play, I would think that Jim Dolan was watching that game somewhere in MSG. Watch his team blow another lead. And I would have to think that he's going to be at MSG tonight too. So if the Rangers can't beat Seattle, and if they can't beat the worst team in the league, I would have to think that Dolan is I don't know what he's going to do off of that, but he's definitely, he's going to have thoughts. Let's just say that. He's gonna have semblances of a plan going forward.
All right, that'll do it for this week's edition of Liberty Blue. Oh, one last thing. I just thought of this.
Yes.
I'd like to send a word of support to our friend Sam Rosen for having to differentiate between Connor Bedard and Brett Berard tonight. I know that's going to be a challenge. Yeah. It's a challenge for me. I've definitely said Bedard more than once when talking about Brett Berard. So,
also, really quickly, we got a comment earlier from somebody, Dimitri on YouTube chat, who was watching from the Cayman Islands. I mean, you're on vacation. You're listening to us, and we appreciate it, man. Thank you.
That'll do it for this week's edition of Liberty Blue. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify, throw the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, get notifications whenever new content goes live. If they fire the coach, if they shoot someone out of a catapult, we'll go live. If not, we'll talk to you